All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into Rohan, specifically Éomer. That guy always charging into battle, super loyal to his king. But I think there's more to him than just that. What do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. He kind of gets, overshadowed a bit by Aragorn, Gandalf, all those big names. But Éomer, his story is really interesting. It's a real transformation. He's not just a warrior, like you said. He's a leader, even early on.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. We see him as this bold warrior, right? But what about his early days? What made him into that leader?
Well, think about it. He's the third marshal of the Rittermark, right? That's not just some title. He's defending Rohan's borders. He's basically their first line of defense.
And that's a big deal, right? Especially in Rohan, where, their whole culture is horses and warfare.
Exactly. And don't forget, he's got like a really tough past. He loses both his parents young, raised by his uncle, King Theoden. I mean, that's going to affect you.
Yeah, not exactly a typical childhood. It makes you think about how that impacted him and Aelin, too.
Oh, yeah, they're bonded super strong. Makes sense when you think about it. They both lost so much. You see, like, Amer's got this fierce protective side, almost like he's a father figure to her.
Okay, so we've got this young warrior. He's shaped by tragedy. He's got all this responsibility. And then Rohan's got all this political chaos going on. Saruman whispering in Theoden's ear, Wormtongue manipulating him. How does Éomer deal with that?
Well, that's where you really see his moral compass, and
Yeah.
his courage. He just flat out refuses to believe Wormtongue's lies, even when it means going against his own uncle. Remember that quote? When they're questioning Aragorn, he's like, do we walk in legends or on the green earth in the daylight?
Oh, yeah. That line gives me chills every time.
Yeah.
He knows, right, that there's all this crazy stuff happening, prophecies, kings coming back, but he's also grounded. He's practical.
Exactly. He's not afraid of the truth, even when it's tough to face. That's what sets him apart. He's not blindly following. He's questioning, he's challenging, he's got his own sense of what's right.
And that leads to him being exiled, right? He stands up for what he believes in, even though it means defying the king. Talk about brave.
And even in exile, he's still loyal. He's still protecting Rohan, leading his own riders against Saruman.
It's interesting how Tolkien shows that loyalty, especially in Rohan, where it's all about the horses. They're everything to them.
It's not an accident that Omer's name literally means horse famous. It's not just a name. It's like it shows how connected he is to that whole Rohirrim way of life. They're all about that bond with horses, that freedom, being masters of the plains.
Yeah, and that whole culture, it's just so cool. I know Tolkien was like really inspired by Anglo-Saxon and Norse traditions when he created them. Does that play into Omer's character?
Oh, definitely. All that warrior culture, the oaths, the loyalty, being connected to the land. It's all those Anglo-Saxon and Norse ideals. Tolkien even used, Old English as the base for their language. It's like stepping into a real historical epic.
It's wild how he brings all that together. It makes you realize just how much thought went into this whole world.
Yeah. It's not just some made-up fantasy world. It's Tolkien's, like, love of language, history, mythology, all rolled into one. And Omer, he's like a perfect example of those influences coming to life. And then you see him, really become a leader in the war, like the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Oh yeah, that battle is just like classic, whether it's the books or the movies. You see him leading those charges, working with Aragorn and Theoden, defending the fortress.
It's interesting, though. In the books, when he first meets Aragorn, there's a little more tension. It's not all buddy-buddy right away, like in the movie.
Right, yeah. Think about it. He's exiled, his king's been manipulated, and then these random guys show up with a hobbit. I get why he wouldn't trust them immediately.
Exactly. But even though he's suspicious, you see that practical side of him come out. He sees the bigger threat. He knows they need allies against Saruman, and as they fight together, that's how the respect and trust builds.
It's a good reminder that, leadership isn't just about giving orders. You have to earn people's trust, work together, all that.
And talking about working together, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields really shows that. Éomer leading the Rohirrim, charging with the forces of Gondor. It shows how he can, like, unite different people against a common enemy.
Oh man, when he thinks Eowyn's dead, chills every time. That grief and rage, it's so intense.
It's really powerful, especially in the book. It's more than just like a warrior's anger. You see how much he loves her, how vulnerable he is under all that toughness.
Makes you think, those moments when you feel that much emotion, does it change a leader? Does going through that kind of loss and grief make you more empathetic, or does it make you harder?
It's a really good question. With Amer, I think it's both. He never forgets that grief, But it also makes him even more determined to protect his people, so no one else has to go through what he did.
It's like his whole life. It all leads to this moment. Orphaned, warrior, exiled,
Hmm.
and then he becomes king. King of Rohan.
And he doesn't just, like, take the crown and that's it. He becomes king because he understands what Rohan needs to heal, to rebuild.
Yeah, he makes that alliance with Gondor right away. Like,
Yeah.
he knows that old way of doing things,
Mm.
staying isolated, that's not going to work anymore.
Right. It shows he's smart politically. He sees that they have to connect with Gondor, build a real partnership based on respect, shared values, all that.
And I think it's interesting how they show his rule in the books versus the movies. You get bits and pieces in the films, but the books really go into it.
Yeah, in the books, you see him as the king. Day-to-day stuff. Rebuilding Rohan, bringing up everyone's morale after the war.
Yeah, it's a good point. Being king isn't just about leading armies. It's about taking care of your people, making sure they're safe, and that they have a future.
And that's where Éomer really shines.
Yeah.
He's got those classic Rohan values, courage, loyalty, love of the land, but he's also looking ahead. He adapts, he changes, he knows Rohan has to do that to survive.
That's such an important part of leadership, right? Holding on to what you believe in, but also knowing when to be flexible, how to deal with change. Elmer really seems to get that balance. It really makes you think, about what being a good leader really means. It's not just about having power or titles. It's more about taking responsibility, having a vision, caring about the people you lead.
Yeah, it's about helping others be their best, working together. And Éomer, he's definitely got that. He doesn't force people. He leads by example. He's got that unwavering courage, loyalty, and he puts Rohan first, always.
And he doesn't shy away from, like, shaking things up when he needs to. Like when he stood up to Wormtongue, even his own uncle, when he saw Rohan going down the wrong path. That takes guts.
Oh, absolutely. He could have just gone along with everything, taken the easy way out. But he saw what was right, He had that moral clarity, and he was brave enough to do something about it, even though it was risky.
It's that kind of moral compass that makes him such a strong leader. He's not just reacting, he's thinking. He's making decisions based on what's right and wrong.
And you can see how his life experiences shaped all of that. Losing his parents, having all that responsibility so young, all the stuff that went down in Rohan, it all helped him grow as a leader.
That's like you can see the line from that young warrior protecting his sister and Rohan all the way to him becoming king, rebuilding everything, making that alliance with Gondor.
It's a pretty amazing transformation, and it doesn't get talked about enough. When people talk about the big heroes in Middle-earth, it's always Aragorn, Gandalf. But Éomer's story is just as interesting.
Yeah, he may not be destined to be king or have like magical wisdom or whatever, but he's got that heart of Rohan, more than almost anyone.
And that's why he's so easy to connect with, I think. He's not perfect, he makes mistakes, he doubts, he grieves, but he overcomes it all, becomes the leader Rohan needs.
It reminds you that being a hero isn't always about big, flashy things. Sometimes it's those quiet moments of courage, those times when you stick to what you believe in, when you fight for what's right, even when it's hard.
Yeah, I think that's something everyone can relate to. We might not have the same problems as Éomer, but everyone's got their own battles, their own times when they need to be brave, be a leader.
So as we finish up this deep dive, I want you to think about this. What parts of Amer's journey really stuck with you? What did you learn from his story? How can you apply those lessons to your own life?
It's something to think about as we keep exploring Tolkien's world and all the amazing characters in it.